Welcome back to Star Wars Timeline. My name is Ben, and I'm continuing to watch and review the Droids show. It's something that you, the fans, have recommended to me. I never had the plans of watching it, but I'm having quite a lot of fun with it so far. I'm currently on episode 10, Tale of the Roon System, and this is what we're going to look at in this video. I will talk about the synopsis, the characters, and I'll give you my impression of it. And if you guys enjoy this video, please consider subscribing, hitting that bell button so you don't miss my future reviews. Obviously, when the Book of Boba Fett comes out, I'll be definitely doing first day reviews of each and every episode. I can't wait for that show. Anyway, quick spoiler alert. As I mentioned, guys, this will be a full-on spoiler review. I'll talk about the plot, the characters, what I think of it. So please, if you don't want to be spoiled, please turn away right now. Go watch the episode, and then you could come back and drop me a few lines in the comment section below. Let me know if you agree with my opinion or not. Let's dive into it. We begin on a brand new planet, and it was interesting that we actually start with the Imperial Stormtroopers. They land on the planet. We see exotic creatures and different buildings around, architecture, and the Empire is looking for this character named Mungo. Now we cut to the cantina. Obviously, cantinas are a popular thing in Star Wars. It's always cool and exciting to see when it's populated by the strange aliens and creatures. And this is where we meet this character, Mungo, who is the new master of the droids, right? C-3PO and R2-D2. They have been kind of traveling from hands to hands all over the first season. They would have certain masters and make friends for a couple of episodes, but they always move on. And this episode is no exception. And what this character's motivations are is that Mungo is looking for the star map to this Roon system. And of course, his motivations will be revealed later on, but he's here to make a deal in this cantina because he found this shady character who is willing to trade the information for him. He makes a swap. He pays the money, and this two-headed alien creature comes up and he tells him, okay, here's the map to what you need to the star system. And right away, I don't know why, I thought it was like a familiar story thread in The Force Awakens when they get like the map to Luke Skywalker's location. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Nice little connection there. I'm pretty sure it's incidental and inconsequential, but it was still pretty cool. And then we're thrown into this R2-D2 breakdancing number. Literally, he goes to this like machine, he pops the song that he wants, and he literally starts breakdancing. And this is pretty ridiculous, guys. I'm like, even for a kid's show, I'm like, hold on a second. Like, it's not only this episode, but an entire show comes to a stop. I'm like, this is just a new level of weird. I can't decide whether it's a good weird or bad weird. We all understand this show was intended for kids in the 80s. It's a completely different mentality, completely different decade. But after all, it's there to have fun. It's for children. Anyway, he's dancing around, and as he's doing so, I am quickly reminded of the Star Wars special editions. I know that you guys know that we're thinking about the same exact episode in The Return of the Jedi where George Lucas went in and he put in this whole entirely new CGI sequence, right? The musical number in Jabba's palace. For those of you who are young and may not be aware, that scene was not originally in The Return of the Jedi, the original cut of the film. It was added much, much later in 1997 with the special editions release. And I'm just thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm just as weirded by this R2-D2 breakdance as I was by the special edition of the Star Wars movie. It was like pretty interesting. It was quite funny. I didn't fixate on it too much. It didn't stop me from enjoying and watching the episode. Anyway, the Stormtroopers are here. They're finally good for something. They apprehend Django. It's like, hey, you're coming with us. But obviously, he is pretty resourceful and he makes an escape in this very cool swoop car or hover car or flying car, whatever you guys want to call it. And I keep returning to the fact that one aspect of the show that I really like is how cool everything looks. Whether it's a spaceport or a new cool starship or whether it's like a new alien creature, everything definitely looks on par. Again, looking at this show, that's something that is presented for kids and is made to be very digestible and simple. On the visual front, even for adults, even for, especially for fans who enjoy comic books and enjoy like art from that regard, this show packs a punch. It's quite interesting. As an animator myself, I really enjoy it. And of course, the secret is revealed that the Roon system is in this Cloak of the Sith sector, which right away I wanted this entire episode put on pause and actually go to the next couple of episodes, because I know the season is about to be over. I'm like, oh my God, you cannot just name drop something as cool sounding as Cloak of the Sith and not give me some storyline connected with it. Now, Matt Wilkins, he also has his channel on YouTube. He's an amazing, amazing YouTuber. I'll drop the link to his video, YouTube channel in this video section below. And he was one of the guys who told me, I'm very curious. Ben is doing the Droids show review. I'm very curious what he's going to think about the show, how George Lucas kind of put a couple elements there that connect to the rest of the Star Wars expanded universe. Obviously, there were episodes which have very, very strong connection, at least in terms of some ideas to Star Wars prequels. And of course, obviously here we're talking about the Cloak of Sith. What is going on here? Is he talking about the Knights of the Old Republic material, or it's something that, much, much older than that? So it immediately got me curious, and I'm like, okay, I don't expect that to be fully on full display in this episode, but I'm really curious where the show is going to go next. Anyway, that was a really, really cool name dropped, and I was like, oh man, this makes me excited to watch this episode. And we could cut to the library where the droids and this new character, Mungo, are looking through the archives, and they want to pinpoint the location of the star system. And some silly shenanigans are happening there, like C-3PO is scared of this little statue. And of course, it's no other than R2-D2 who is the most useful. He grabs something that looks like a VHS cassette, he pops it into the computer, and they're able to get their directions, which, okay, pretty cool. And I don't know why, but from the earliest point in this episode, for some reason, I got the Star Trek vibes. I don't know why. Is it the format of the story? Is it the fact that they're looking for this, there's star charts and, there's this planet they're looking for? Something was going on. And I will come back to this little thought later on as I review this episode. So now we cut to this Imperial ship, right? The space probe returns from the system, and it says it made some analyses. And now this Admiral Screed, this very cool-looking, badass Imperial character, also has the coordinates to the same star system that our friends do. And right away, I thought he was very interesting looking. His half of his face buried in this mechanical parts, like his eye, obviously a nod to the Terminator movies, but also a nod to other characters from Star Wars video games. For those of you guys who know the story of, Kyle Katarn and the Jedi Fallen Order, and all of that aspect of the Star Wars video game universe, it's pretty familiar. And even in like a Star Wars RPG games, and if you check out other resources and books, it's not the most unique thing for an Imperial to have like some kind of a cybernetic implant or something like that. But I thought still he looks pretty cool. He's not quite human, right? Because of his he has a snout. So he's obviously an alien. Once again, pretty intriguing for an Empire to hire somebody who is not a human. That's pretty cool, because there was an explanation, George Lucas saying that the reason that all the Imperials are human in the movies is because they're kind of like biased and they don't like aliens of any kind, and they're very pro-human. Pretty interesting that they have an alien for this episode. And he also gets the coordinates for this planet, and as on their way there in this very, very cool-looking Imperial starship, which is sort of similar to those triangular, signature shapes of the Star Destroyers, but not quite. It has an interesting, unique design, which I also really like. I thought it stands out from the rest of the Imperial, fleet. And he's being contacted by this other shady figure, Governor Kung. And he presents his service. He bows down to the Empire, and he says, I bring the gift with this probe droid. And inside of it, of course, they unlock it, and it shows the Roon Stone, one of the most valuable resources in the galaxy. I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. I really enjoyed that interaction between Imperials and the rest of the galaxy who are not necessarily rebels. This is how the Empire subjugates other planets and other solar systems. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting bit of lore. You could have an entire episode in a children's show, which is not dedicated to action and adventuring necessarily, but you have something that continues that plot with the Empire. It's something that I didn't expect, but wanted from this show. And it's nice that they're actually delivering it to us, and they're showing some of that. So now we're back to Mungo, and what he wants to do as he flies to this planet, he's kind of like talking to the droids. He says, okay, I want to open up the new trade routes, and I want to help my father, his merchants fleet, to help it and rescue it from financial ruin. And of course, this particular moment is very important because it shows us this character's motivations and that he's not selfish. So I really enjoyed that the show separates him from Han Solo. He's not just a Han Solo clone who's, out there in the galaxy just looking out for himself. He's a different kind of like altruistic person, and he's actually there. He wants to help. He wants to do a good thing, help his father, and open up these trade routes. So very cool distinction. Visually, he looks as badass as Han Solo, but his motivations are quite different. And he follows these rainbow comets. They get through a radioactive cloud, which once again made me think, this is very much Star Trek. Like some kind of exotic space bodies, planetary bodies, or gas clouds floating through space. And when the Star Trek ships encounter it, some kind of always an interesting episode happens there. I'm like, Star Trek vibes all the way there. So the Mongo and the droids, they arrive into this planetary system and to the Umbu light station. And they're greeted by Governor Kung, who mistakes them for Imperial emissaries. Again, it's a very familiar trope in Star Wars comic books. It happens all the time, especially the new Star Wars Marvel run. Often, it actually, the first couple of episodes, books begin where the gang goes to this Imperial facility and they pose themselves as the Imperial representatives, which was, again, an interesting idea. It's something that we see recurring in Star Wars. And I thought it was pretty fun and interesting the way it's done here. And of course, they want to survey the station just to try to understand what the heck is going on here and why this guy is looking for the Imperial emissaries. And as they play their part and they go around, they're taken into the store, this governor shows all the stolen treasure, including the Nergon 4 metal, which is very, very valuable, we saw in the previous episodes, and other very valuable resources and materials that he was able to accumulate. They're basically pirates, stockpiling everything in the space station. And we'll also encounter a couple of exotic creatures, Mupples. We'll come back to them. Star Trek, okay? Bear with me. But we also meet a prisoner, which once again shows how vile and bad these guys are. They're just as bad as the Empire. And they're holding a prisoner who was a former custodian or supervisor of the Umbu Light Station. Now the real Empire arrives, right? Admiral Screed, he's obviously has much more authority. He says, all the stormtroopers come out of the shuttle. He says, now the Empire's here. Who are these guys? Go capture them. And the whole chase begins. Obviously, they capture the droids. They capture Mongo, and he's imprisoned. And Mongo is thrown with the Mupples' prison cell. They're kind of like isolated by this like laser beam, which basically creates like a prison cell for them. Star Trek. For the third time, I'm saying it, right? For those of you guys who watched the original Star Trek show, some of the most popular creatures from that show are the Tribbles. There's one episode dedicated to these creatures, and they're like, I think they're known even to modern audience, these fuzzy-looking, small, little, very super cute creatures. And I don't think it was a mistake or an accident that Mongo ends up in their cell. This is straight up a nod to Star Trek show. I don't care what anyone says. This is one example where a Star Wars show is being inspired by Star Trek, and there is nothing wrong with it. I thought it was actually quite cute and interesting. And of course, he makes friends to that other human who says his name is Yaldarb, something like that, or Yaldarb. And he says, this is who I am. This was the station. And these guys basically took over. And basically, what they have been doing, Governor Kung explains to the Imperials that he's been luring unsuspecting starships traversing this area, luring them in, and basically taking all of their treasures, which is, again, explain who they are. Obviously, R2-D2 is the biggest help in this episode. Once again, he frees himself, he helps free the rest of his friends, and this is where all of the chase begins all over the station. And of course, our friends are able to dodge the Imperials, and they're jumping inside of it the Imperial shuttle. And as they're doing it, the Imperials are announcing, oh my God, the ship has been damaged, and it's actually on the collision course with the asteroid belt. So the good guys jump in the Imperial ship, and the Imperials have no other choice but to jump into Mungo's ship, which is an interesting crisscross, the turn of events, and I'm pretty sure it's the setup for the next episode. So what did I think in general for this episode, The Tale of the Roon Comets? I thought it was pretty adventurous. It makes me wonder what the show could have been 4 or 5 seasons in, with huge name drops like, the Cloak of the Sith. What's going on there? What was George Lucas thinking? What was his thought process and the runners of the show? And where were they trying to take it? But what also makes it kind of weird for me is you're revealing something that is a lot more adult-oriented material, like the Sith, but it's in the context of a kid's show, and I'm not exactly sure how that would have been received were he to pursue that storyline. So I don't know what to think of it. It's just, I gotta say, what I still like about this episode, it sets up that world-building quality about it, and it sets up the potential, what could have been told in this show. And I really like that. Once again, I enjoyed all the technology. The Imperial starship, I liked Mungo's ship. I really liked the way Mungo looks as a character, but that he is personality-wise very different from Han Solo. So all in all, still an enjoyable episode. Of course, the weirdest thing were the R2-D2's little, robot dance, and then we got the little chase inside of the station, which was like all over the place. It's just, the Imperial just stops the friends like this, and they run in a different direction. Obviously, we understand why. It's very digestible and made simple so the younger generation could enjoy this show. So far, so good. I'm liking it. Now I'm really hyped for episode 11 and see where it's going to go with this whole Sith lore. Is it going to explore any more of it? And what is exactly about the star system that Mungo and the droids are going to discover that has not been revealed just yet? Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks a lot for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts on what you think about this show and this episode particularly, especially with the big name drops and, and connection to the Sith lore. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate your time. Please consider subscribing to my channel, and I can't wait until the Book of Boba Fett show is here, and I'm going to be reviewing it episode by episode on day 1. I promise you guys. I'll see you next time.